We are back again.
Yes, I'll let you do the rest of the introductions, Rob.
It's like an Eminem song, Eminem. I think he would he was like a white guy,
Who
like
did
from the
white rapper? Yes.
the Sticks.
Uh-huh.
But
So
some
you like
people
rap
say that
music?
Eminem was Jewish. Is that true?
I've no idea.
Anyway,
So
so we're live now.
yes, we are.
Based. How are you, Claire? Did you survive your kind of, what would you call it? Rob 1.0 Koraniyule experience? I mean,
Oh
I know
yeah.
you got mad and kicked me out. And to be honest, I felt bad as well because, I just reverted to swearing when I couldn't remember things. So that's fair enough. That's fair enough. Although I think we made some great points
I agree.
collaboratively, even
Yeah.
though, no one sort of realizes it.
Well, as long as I realize it. And going over the timestamps, I thought they were great. But then I have another opportunity. So we'll call this um, Korani, um, 7th Koraniyule 2025, take 2 with Rob Cobb. So you've actually had 2 goes. And people will notice and people will comment and people might listen because of the unusual title for you.
Well, great, yes. And I think, the timeline may be difficult to swallow for some people, but, it's like, you go off on the occult, you get like deep into the reaches of, Aleister Crowley and the OTO and Thelemites and solid rocket production and, cults in America and, everyone tunes out. Right. So
Yeah.
let's get back into more like fundamental matters, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And what might that be?
Well, I mean, namely eugenics, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't want to like explicitly say this stuff, but like one of the things I thought about was like, the drugs that are available for abortion, right? The after morning pill.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways that's great. I mean, I think that's probably the best thing. Well, not the best thing, but it's the best thing within a group of people that don't matter, right? So I think like abortion, and this is kind of a little bit of a Richard Spencer take, but it's not so much of one. It's like, who are aborting their children, right? It's the people that have low impulse control, the people that have, a higher a lower time preference, whatever the time preference thing is, right? Those who can't, even read Shakespeare because it's too boring. It's too boring to read Shakespeare, right? These are the sort of the people that maybe, God doesn't really need to be alive. And now I'm bringing it into God, but, it's kind of like, are these the people that really matter? I don't know. This is kind of a very elitist. Some people would call this elitist, but it's like, do we really care about people that don't say anything interesting? Do you know what I mean? It's like the NPC meme. It's like, yeah, some people are just kind of not conscious.
Well, I think everyone matters in that you need your labor force. You don't want them to feel that laboring is beneath them, and so you need to manage your society. And so the success of any society is labor management. Historically, empires fall when they don't do it properly. I mean, it goes way, back to Moses. He basically took the labor force of ancient Egypt out of Egypt. I mean, that's why the Pharaoh wouldn't let him go, right? And then the Roman Empire, the Roman Republic had problems with its labor, and the plebs would go on strike by actually leaving Rome and camping outside it until the patricians came to beg for them to come back, promising them better working conditions, and the Romans had tribunes which represented the plebs. So you could say that the success of the Roman Empire was this, ability to manage the plebs, and treat them increasingly better, until the Roman Empire became so successful that it was flooded with cheap labor and slaves, and I guess the plebs kind of got a better life if all they were interested in was bread and circuses. But in the end, they became degenerate on the bread dough, and then refused to breed and refused to learn Latin properly, and they couldn't even read or write anymore. And the slaves took over the Roman labor force, and then the Roman Empire was forced to hire mercenaries, and that really was the end for them, because once
Yeah.
you give money to mercenaries, they're going to take their time and not do it properly to squeeze more money out of you.
Yeah. So one
And
thing about
this is what's happened to the American Empire, really.
Okay, well, we're going into the American Empire. I
we
wanted
don't.
to stick
That's all I
into
was. Yeah.
the Roman Empire for a little while longer.
Mhm.
And one of the things is technological development, right? So one of the kind of, and I would call it dysgenic factors when it comes to slavery, is basically slavery kind of it kind of holds people back from inventing more efficient technology, right? Like they say the Romans invented the steam engine. This is what they say, at least. Maybe they're wrong, but the Greeks had the world clock, the universal clock. What was it called? The Anthropocarious mechanism or something. It was like this complex kind of clock watch thing with gears and so on. Do you know about this?
I'm sorry, you've lost me.
Okay, well, maybe I've gone too far, too fast. But what I'm saying is, slavery kind of allows for a certain laziness, and it also allows for people that would otherwise be slaves to, elevate themselves via unfortunate circumstances, right? If like in say Victorian England, if you had a barony or something and you had like whatever it was, like 100, 200 slaves on your barony, and some of them were imported from countries with lower IQs, right? These people would, inevitably, depending on how many kids you had, they would inevitably corrupt your progeny, right? And some of them, God forbid, one or two of them may have been corrupted in the ultimate form, which is kind of rape, or in another way they were siphoned off in some kind of protest against the common, or the, what would I say, the order, the current order, right? So if you imagine yourself,
an example of this, what you're trying to express, because when you talk about corruption, I think you're just saying race mixing, right? And you don't like to look at it, and it displeases you. But what is this corruption?
no. I mean, it's a reality, though, is what I'm saying. And I'm saying it's inevitable. Race mixing.
Yes,
race mixing is an inevitability when you introduce foreign people into your kind of zone of influence, right?
Well, imperialism is race mixing, right? The successful conquerors will be raping the local women and producing mixed race children. But that's okay if you're a conqueror.
I mean, is that true though? I mean, I think of the Spartan. Well, okay, the Spartans weren't an empire, that's another thing. Maybe empire is just dysgenic then, right?
Well, yes, you could say that simply because, having an empire is like being born. The moment you are born, you're going to die. Yes, it's a logical inevitability that the moment you are born dictates that you will die.
Yeah, people have lives, Claire. Yeah, if we could put it in liberal mind's eye, it would be like, yes, people are born and they have the right to life, and they are allowed to live. Is what you're saying, but unfortunately, the cause of some people being allowed to live is that they are going to corrupt the people that rule over them, right?
So the people in charge should not, should have some kind of mechanism to prevent corruption, and this is called religion.
Yes. Okay, here we go. So we're getting into religion. But the Spartans, I mean, they had their own kind of folk religion, but really, did they have a religion? Because I feel like what they did was pure genetics, right? It was okay, they had slaves and so on, but there was no way a Spartan woman would ever be taken by a slave, right? That would be beyond. And if that did occur, I'm sure they had laws to throw her down a cliff or something like this. Is this true? Or I don't actually know. Maybe it wasn't true.
Well, I don't know either. But the point is that the Spartans are extinct, right? And this means they have failed. So we need to compare ourselves with civilizations still in existence who have a long track record. There's no point, going back to, the Aztecs or whatever, because obviously they failed. We should be able to use our powers of deduction and think, extinct civilization. Well, let's not go their way because they crash and burn.
Well, okay, so this was my kind of point about abortion, right? So if we do live in an empire, which we do, by the way, I think we live under the American Empire and so on, and or the British Empire, which has also failed, by the way. But yeah, it leads to race mixing, inevitably, right? Which is, it's kind of interesting because if we're talking about eugenics, I think you could use the term upward mobility, right? Have you heard of this term? It's
Mm-hmm.
Which basically it means someone can, and this is what they say about Rome at its height, right? They say that the Roman Empire at its height was the most upward mobile empire, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So a slave could become an emperor, which I think did actually happen. I could be wrong, but I think it did actually happen. Like a gladiator or whatever became the emperor of Rome at some point in history.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what my question is that eugenic? And I would argue it is, because ambition is like a genetic trait, right? If someone like has a high IQ, like a 250 IQ or whatever, he's like an Einstein, but he lives in his bedroom, that's not going to contribute to anything. And it really doesn't matter, right? And just like a Shakespeare, I mean, Shakespeare, I don't know what his IQ was. It doesn't really matter. I mean, Shakespeare was kind of beyond IQ because of just his brilliant insights. But, you know, that kind of adds IQ points. But what I'm saying is, when it comes to eugenics, it's like it is actually, it does mean pure, like, domination. In other words, if you can rise within an empire that is like so rigid, then you have proven yourself, right? And I think like some of the kind of ethno talk that a lot of like white guys go on about these days it's just really lacking a greater vision.
Sorry, what was this vision that these white guys have of what you mean an all-white West again? Is that what is this vision that you're complaining about that you say is lacking in vision? The vision that is lacking in vision.
Well, I'm just saying that like if we're talking about eugenics as like a force in the world, it's kind of a byproduct, right? And I don't think
Byproduct of what?
No. Well,
A
that's my
byproduct of what?
question. That's really my question to you is like, how do we accelerate? Because here's another question. right?
Accelerate what?
It's-
We need to define all these things.
Okay, sorry. I'm
Accelerate
talking about
towards
the
what?
acceleration of the best man, like the Ubermensch, right? If you like look in your mind's eye and consider the Ubermensch, it's sort of like an Adonis, like Greek god. It's like the
The
ultimate
gods are not
muscles.
humans. We have to distinguish between, myths and heroes. So maybe we should just define what we mean by eugenics in a universal way. So I've talked about.
I think that would help. Yeah, sorry. I think I went off a little bit there.
Because
Yeah,
really,
sorry.
you could be talking about your idea of eugenics, and I could be and actually we have different ideas of eugenics. And I'm saying that actually, all these eugenicists like Herbert Spencer and Charles Darwin were kind of reinventing the wheel, because marriage is eugenic. It is a eugenic practice, and the trait of marriageability is a desirable, heritable eugenic trait.
Yes, which I agree with, right? But what I don't agree with is if you have, say, a barony in England, for instance, which my family was descended from, right? The Lamberts had a barony, and we can look at the Lambert barony now, and it's like kind of a, what would you say? It's like a hollow version of what it was initially, right? Okay.
Mhm.
But the thing about the barony system is like, is it eugenic? Because at that point, you're getting servants, they have wealth, their kids are very comfortable, they have private tutors, or they go to the best schools available in the country and so on. And it's not a challenge anymore, right? It's kind of this insular world of like wealth, or, they're insulated from kind of the struggles of like the general genetic struggles of the world, right?
Well, people have different priorities. It's sort of like, what do you do once you're king, right? You have to ensure that your progeny is fit for kingship, or you'll lose it. Some rival royal house will fight you and win and kick you out and kill you maybe. So,
what you're saying is like medieval war is eugenic, is what you're saying.
No, I think. Look, if you think of royal families, what made them successful? I guess from the beginning they were good at fighting, and the king appointed them, to their own land. They were warlords. I think, fundamentally it's all about warlordism. You're good at fighting. You command men who are good in battle, and you obtain the king's favor, and he gives you land, and you become a baron. Right? That was how it worked in the olden days.
Yeah. Or in my case, unfortunately, he was a trader, right? So his great skill was to make money in specifically the South Sea Company. I don't know if you know about this company. It existed in like 1600 or something, but he was the man that exited before the crash, right? And he was able to obtain a barony and attend a royal wedding, by the way, with his son, Little Lambert, who was a page boy in the royal wedding. So anyway, my point is, it's not necessarily like, it's not both like, okay, so there's a lot of like Nietzschean terms when it comes to eugenics, right? One is like rule of the fittest, or sorry, that's a Darwin term. What is it called? Survival of the fittest. Survival of the fittest, right? There's another one which is a Nietzschean term, which is more of kind of like it's who like force is, or what is it's
might is right.
Yeah, might is right. These sort of terms, but I don't really think. I think those terms were made after the fact, and I think really what makes eugenics is kind of like struggle, right? I think struggle is like when people are thrown into the ultimate, like, apocalypse situation, or Ragnarok is like a term from Nordic paganism. These are the kind of like, in the Bible, it's what is it called? The Revelation, right? The Revelation. And a lot of people say the apocalypse doesn't actually mean the apocalypse. Apocalypse actually means like an enlightenment, or it means like finding out about things. It's like a download of information that no one knows about, or something like this, which is, that's the New World Order term for it. But these are the kind of trials that like men go through, right? And I think, and women as well. So I just don't know if like eugenics is like, I don't know if you can engineer eugenics, is what I'm saying, right? I know, like, if we just abandoned all of abortion and cut off, say, welfare in the UK. Just imagine this, right? Tomorrow, what is tomorrow? It's like Friday. What is it in the UK? Saturday?
What? Sorry. Why are you asking me about time differences? Hello?
I'm trying to create a scenario here.
Right. So why you? Okay. What was your question again?
Well, I wasn't asking a question. My question is, what day is it going to be in the UK tomorrow?
Oh, tomorrow it will be. Well, today's Wednesday. Tomorrow will be Thursday.
Okay. Well, what I'm saying is, if you woke up tomorrow, right, and abortion was legal, right, but we were at war with Russia, i.e., Britain was at war with Russia.
What's that got to do with Wednesday, Thursday?
I'm trying to give you a scenario. Can you not imagine situations in your mind, Claire?
Okay. So the scenario is today is either Wednesday or Thursday, and Britain is at war with Russia, and then.
And abortion is legal. Is it legal?
Yes, of course it's legal. There's the abortion pill and morning after pill, and yeah, you get
right.
it in the NHS.
And Russia somehow took control within the next, say, week or two or whatever. Right? They invaded Britain proper for some reason, whatever it was. There was some pagan site that they wanted to take control of, and
okay.
whatever. Right? Let me finish with my scenario. Let me finish with my scenario. Okay, so the Russians took over, right? And what they said was every non genetic English or Celtic person has to leave the islands of Britain.
Okay, kick the non-whites out, yeah, and then?
Well, you would be out as well, by the way.
And then?
And they were murdering and raping at the same time, right? These I'm just reliving the Viking invasions here.
Okay, you and then what's the point of the scenario?
So the scenario is anyone that would survive that harsh, incredibly in your face evolutionary pressure, right? So some, maybe yourself, some people that weren't English would actually remain and fight, right, against this, right? And what I'm saying is that evolutionary pressure is really what eugenics is. And so what I'm saying is if, the Vikings became a great power, i.e. Russia, and they came back in to our Emerald Isle, like the Irish call it, and they started raping and pillaging. Those who were, what's the word? They were smart enough to hide in the woods or bury underground, right? These are another, evolution presses, or they were able to convince the Russians that they were smart and they could speak Russian maybe, or whatever, right? Those who were allowed to live in that incredibly harsh scenario, right? That is eugenics, right? Eugenics is basically, like I said, the survival of the fittest, but it's also the survival of the smartest, the most charismatic. It's also the survival of I don't know, the most resourceful, all of this stuff, right? It's not just kind of this grand idea of like empire or anything else. It's a very kind of harsh environment, no?
Sure. So if you survive pestilence, invasion, natural disaster, then you know there's something about you, as you say, individually, you're smarter than the others. You knew how to fight, or were smart enough to hide, or somehow remain alive. But what we're talking about here is the survival of civilizations, right? And that is basically what you do to see the fitness of certain civilizations to survive, and you just look at their moral system, their belief system, their religion, their laws, and then you will kind of there's only five, right? There's only five world religions, but they all support marriage, and then and marriage is about enhancing the marriageability of your offspring and your descendants. Because once you buy into the system, you'll think, well, I really believe in this marriage thing. It is a child protection scheme. I'm not going to have any bastards. I'm going to, make sure that all, my offspring are legitimate, etc. And then you create this chain of legitimacy and this, chain of being able to maintain your identity. Right. Because I think the problem with Christianity is that, it tries to be all things to all men. And then, but then, from the beginning, it was only a creature of the state. The Catholic Church was a creature of the state. So it basically did whatever the monarch wanted and had to fit in with the times. And now in the 21st century and parts of the late 20th century, the church became liberal, and the church was the state became liberal, and the church was expected to go along with it, and so it has. So it has proven to be, because the Pope is liberal, and so is the Archbishop of Canterbury, who is now female and supportive of LGBT issues.
Yeah.
So
which is just
religion it was that kind of let the barbarians in, I guess.
Yeah, which is it's a what would you call it? It's immoral because it's dysgenic, right? Okay. Have you ever equated eugenics with morality?
Yes, because all moral systems, all religions support the patriarchy. Because centuries ago, the people worked out that, well, society would be more stable if we had children and parented them properly. So we have to support monogamy. And this means we have to support the principle that men and women, once they marry each other, have to stay faithful to each other, if only for the sake of the children. Therefore, people who have sex outside marriage will be disgraced, will be punished, treated as sex offenders, etc., etc. That used to be what was taken for granted, without even thinking. But in the last 50 years, it all went away. Like, well, why can't we have sex with whoever we fancy? What is the problem? The sky hasn't fallen in, and I've, just come from an orgy. People sort of thought like that, I suppose, because there was once this idea of, victimless crimes. It's like, well, I've had sex with somebody, not my spouse. The sky hasn't fallen in. What business is it of yours?
Yeah.
And now we know. Now we know what the problem is.
Yeah, but that's kind of my point, though. It's like, what is more powerful? The idea of freedom, right, which is an abstract theory, but it's incredibly powerful in Western society for some reason, or the idea of a hierarchy of laws,
Well, you need a hierarchy for the group to survive. Imagine, well, the army without hierarchy. Well, who's going to do anything? Nobody will agree to do anything unless, there's actually, a hierarchy with a general at the top, telling his troops to attack that fortress there. And the troops not saying, you go and do it then, if you're so smart, Mr. General.
Mm.
It would be impossible. Nobody would do anything or listen to each other. And what you were saying at the beginning about society is that, we don't want to be in a society with more chiefs than Indians. I don't know if you're familiar with that expression.
Yeah. It's like more cooks in the kitchen, right?
More
Same
people who want to give orders than there are people prepared to take orders.
Yeah, I mean, have you looked up that French chef that trained Gordon Ramsay? Maybe you can look him up. Marco Pierre White.
Yes.
Yeah. So he was like the head of the fucking kitchen, right? And he was more genetically fit than Gordon Ramsay would ever hope to be, right? Even though, he kind of squandered his genetics. We can talk about how people can squander their genetics later. But Marco Pierre White, in his youth, was like an absolute god. I mean, he was kind of a god. He was the god of like French and British cooking at the time. He would like phone up random people. This is on, you can look up the tape, to book in his restaurant. He would just hook up with them. He was like, well, what's your room number in your hotel? Okay, well, I'll be there at 7 p.m. or whatever it was, in his French accent, which was incredibly alluring to some British girl who was trying to make a booking, and then he just slept with them, and then whatever, right? So, it's like this kind of thing. And that's what I don't get. I really don't get this thing of your, you have kind of a, what's the word? An aversion to like genetically fit people, right? To beauty, right? Like you have an aversion to Richard Spencer, for example. I mean, Richard Spencer.
I despise him for his lack of principle, and you're just
Yeah.
like Vincent. You can only see eugenics in being young and sexy and attractive, and you don't.
But isn't that what it is, though?
You're part of the cult of youth and beauty, which is fundamentally shallow.
But isn't that what the Greeks were making sculptures of?
Greeks are extinct. I mean, you keep, harking back to the glory days of ancient Europe, but they're extinct. So something.
So what you're saying is we have become dysgenic now, is what you're saying.
Of course you have, because you're not marriageable. So if you say marriageable, it's sort of like, no, it's not just like being, I fancy you. It's got to be, are you going to be a good parent? Are you going to be a good spouse? Do you have prospects as a man? Will you be a good mother?
But Claire, women, I mean, let's be honest. Women do not look at like moral values or logic when they're selecting a mate.
Okay, so if your women aren't behaving, you have to change the rules. Instead of complaining like women, you are joining the queue of complaining and muscling in on female territory of complaining without proposing a solution. So that's
okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. I get that. British men and men in general in the Western world have been complaining. Yeah, no, I get that. They have been complaining for far too long. I get that. But, like, that doesn't deny the fact that kind of the ultimate solution is really just conquering something. Like, ultimate expression.
The neocon mindset. So
Sorry?
when your women get too much, you go and bomb a country and then traffic all the
Oh, God,
Muslims of
yeah.
these
Well,
countries
maybe.
to
I
bomb the
mean,
crap
I
out
didn't
of
want to
and then
go there,
complain
but
about
yeah, I
immigration.
mean,
That's
I
so
don't want to
clever,
go.
isn't it?
You've just gone full Richard Spencer. I mean, you hate the guy, but that's what you've done because that's
How
all
have I
he
gone
talked about.
full Richard Spencer?
Well, his whole thing is NATO and, Pax
No, but I
Americana and the empire is
I'm
everything.
not.
And
No, I'm not saying we should carry on doing that. I'm saying I understand the psychology of, we're being henpecked at home. Let's start another war, and then feel good about ourselves, and then ship all those Muslims whose countries were bombed the crap out of to our countries as cheap labor, and then complain about these immigrants. It doesn't make sense, does it? It's not joined up thinking, is it?
I guess. But my question is, like, why do you even care about Arabs at all? Is one
I
of the
didn't say
questions.
I cared about Arabs. When did I ever say I cared about Arabs?
Well, you're so like pro-Islam. It's kind of like
Well, I'm
baked
just
into the
saying
cake.
it's the only way to solve your problems. And all you can do is personalize it, like Claire cares about Muslims and Arabs. No, I'm saying I have a solution. Can you look at it without freaking out and be able to examine it on its own merits? And apparently not. It's all about
Hmm.
looks to you, whether somebody's fair-skinned or sexy or young, and everything just goes out of your mind. It's
Yeah,
all
but
just movie
I'll
crap,
go
right?
back to I'll
Hollywood
go back to
predicts.
I'll go back to seduction again. So what is more sexy for a woman? Any woman, by the way. Is it
A man
rules
is not muscling in.
or is it a Viking who wields a fucking axe? Like, what is more sexy?
Well, I don't know any women who find axe murderers sexy. Sorry.
Come on, Claire. Don't deny your own psychology. That's crazy to say that.
So you think masculinity is wielding an axe to you?
No, that's just a crude example. But
Yeah, well, can you be
I'm
less
just
crude?
saying.
Can you be less crude?
Okay,
Are you going
well,
to say masculinity is having bulging biceps, broad shoulders, a six-pack, a large penis?
but
Anything else?
you can't deny that that is not attractive.
Well, let's forget physical attributes. Let's just
But
assume
that's
that
how
a man
women
will have
operate.
a
I mean,
beard and
let's not talk
muscles
about
and
you talk about biology, but you don't really understand biology.
you're the one who doesn't understand. It's all about looks to you, right? It's some, computer animation fantasy, you know. But deeper than that,
But
you
that's
just don't
what
care about.
evolution is, Claire. Evolution is a computer simulation through struggle and survival of the fittest. I mean, is it
Yeah,
not?
and the survival of the fittest group. Yes.
So what you're saying is you're basically denying eugenics. You're saying
No,
we
I'm not.
can
I'm trying to explain it to you, and you won't get it. So, what are
okay,
these
explain
groups?
it to me.
Okay, so as I've been saying, there are 5 world religions, and these religions compete against each other in attempting to acquire empire. And actually, the loser ones would be the Eastern religions of Hinduism and Buddhism, because they've acquired zero empire. They've got, bigger, a higher birth rate, but that's by the by. So we only have the 3 Abrahamic religions. The Jews, well, they're only 1% of the total human population. Let's leave them out. So basically, it's just Christianity and Islam as a moral and legal political system. So there is a difference, but the stark difference between Christianity and Islam is that one of them takes marriage seriously, and the other one supports gay marriage and transgenderism.
Okay, and I will give you that. I'll give you that. In terms of the classical kind of Greek paganism, it gets a little bit gay, which is maybe the problem. I get
So
that, right?
what
It's
gets a
like
bit
the
gay?
over admiration of like the male form. I get that, right? Maybe okay, maybe the statues, that was possibly a wrong move. So, but that doesn't mean that biology is wrong. So, okay, what is more attractive to a woman? Harvey
Money,
Weinstein?
status, power. That's it.
Can I
We're very
finish
easy to
my
work
point?
out. Money, status, and power. We'll marry you. We'll let you have sex with us if you have those things.
Oh, okay,
Or at the
but
very
that's
least,
ridiculous
have the
because
appearance. Have
that's
the appearance.
ridiculous though. Because
What's so
no, let
ridiculous
me
about
finish.
that?
Let me finish. An attractive young woman will sleep with the gardener, even the fucking apparent like Aryan queen who is like a head of a household in America will sleep with the gardener like outside of her marriage because of the male form, right? Because he's more fit, he has muscles, he's working the garden, right? Is this not a factor in your so-called theory of eugenics?
Okay, there is a difference between fuckability and marriageability, wouldn't you say? Don't men and women
Absolutely.
sometimes
And
think,
I would
yeah, I'll
say,
have sex with him or her, but I won't marry him or her. Yes or no?
absolutely. But
Right.
imagine for a second if there was no contraception and there was no abortion, right? Imagine a world, right? Apart from technology. I mean, how eugenic would that be, right? I mean, that is beyond riches
Okay, so
and
then
status.
women would take more care about who they have sex with, right?
Okay, well, maybe, but I don't
Yes,
think so.
of course they would.
I don't think that's true.
Okay, so you think women would still be stupid if they didn't know they could have the morning after pill, the
At
abortion
least
pill, abortion
for a
on the
few hundred years,
NHS.
yeah. At least for a few hundred years, they would.
Okay, then they would be punished for having a bastard, and their
Mm.
fathers might kick them out, and they would end up in a whorehouse because then
So I
that
think
would be
I think all of your ideology is wrong then, because I think like you're obsessed with patriarchy for some reason.
well, because it is eugenic compared to matriarchy.
Is it though?
Well, you're living in a matriarchy, in case you haven't noticed.
And yet, I can turn up to a public place and pick up virtually anyone just because of my physical presence, right? And I'm not saying, I'm born from the gods or something like this, but I kind of am saying that.
So, so you're in a relationship, are you?
No, I'm not in a relationship. Okay. My problem is when it comes to propagating, whatever the word is. My problem is I feel bad for being in that position. So I have like a patriarchal complex, or what would you call it? A new world order complex. I feel bad for being handsome is basically what I'm saying. I don't adhere to the game of status or wealth, right? I have some
Well, because you
wealth.
have that.
It's not like it's a meager compared to like a lot of people. And it's also like I have, some presence via like the music industry, but I don't have like really, I don't have any stake in the society really. But
Well, because you don't
I
have
still
children.
get laid. Well, okay, here's my problem with getting laid, right? The problem is it leads to procreation, and what I feel like within my own personal like hang up is like it's not, I don't need to bring a kid into this fucked up world, which I guess it brings back, kind of this idea of like maybe, psychological what do you call it, like psychological warfare has kind of, has nailed me and my progeny to the post.
Why? Because you just don't fancy getting married.
Well, I just think it's too much.
Well, of course,
It's
it's
too
going to
much
be more than
effort.
you can chew, right?
Yeah, but it's too much like, I don't know. It's too much to bring a human of such knowledge and prowess into the world when the world is so sick.
Well, don't you think that your ancestors lived through tougher times than yourself? And you're
That's
the
an
living.
interesting question. I would actually
Well, obviously
argue
they
that they
did.
lived in.
Bloody
I would
hell.
actually argue that they lived in better times.
Well, how are you going to establish that to the satisfaction of, well, rational inquiry? You're just going to say, that's how I feel about it. I'm sure my ancestors had a wonderful time and wouldn't envy me at all.
What I'm saying is, I don't think if okay. What I'm saying, if reproductive technology didn't exist, i.e., abortion and the condom, I would be totally doing everything I could to impregnate everyone. But I feel like that's a false, like it's almost like offensive that option exists, right?
What, sorry bastards all over the place?
Yeah.
Well, you should be a married father if you're going to take your progeny seriously.
No,
I mean,
but that's what I'm saying. I think the option that women have nowadays, I can't control it, right?
you're
I'm
saying
such a
it's not
chad.
worthwhile getting married because the the family courts are rigged against men. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's because like
Okay, so
I
ask
live in a society where
why did you, if the rules are not right, form the intention of changing them? But none of you are interested. You just prefer to whinge about feminists and feminism. But when I say, well, why don't you abolish no-fault divorce? Not interested. No, we just want to complain about Jews and blame Muslims. That's it.
hey, I would abolish no fault divorce like tomorrow if
Yeah,
I
but
had the power to do it.
there's nobody more important than you who cares about these things. It's like, no, because we're all shagging our girlfriends, right?
Exactly, and it's like, I don't know. That's the thing I don't get in modern society. What I don't get is why would you ever sleep with someone if you would never produce an heir, right? Because I don't
Because they
see
let you, the
vision.
slags and sluts let you get away with it. They let you pump and dump them. And that's why you
But
do
that's
it.
the point I'm making. It's like I would never ever like pump and dump anyway. So okay. So I've gone through kind of a revolutionary thought pattern where I was hot when I was younger. right? And now, like, I'm less desirable, but don't get me wrong, I could still pick up a chick in a bar. But my point is, why would I ever do that again? Because society is so against everything I'm about.
Well, you have a great opportunity now because I've been going on about men declaring a marriage strike. I mean, it's so easy. It's like nobody wants to marry you anyway, but you can say, "Well, I'm not going to get married until no fault divorce is abolished." You could all say that and just sit back and think of England, right? It's no
I
effort.
love that. Think of England. That's so beautiful. Okay, I love that. Sorry.
Yeah, and that's a terrible thing. It's like you prefer the passivity that women are supposed to assume, because it's just easier, right? And I'm saying yes, you can do it if that's what you want to do. So and all you have to do is just talk about it, and then it will happen. How about that? This is my promise to you. You just say we're not going to get married now.
But what I'm
Therefore,
scared of is like the opportunities that she's presented after the question, right? And the opportunities are she could, get involved with a feminist organization in Adelaide, or right, and she could just like, appeal to the sisterhood, and then I would be the demon, right? I would be the great Satan at that point.
Okay, I have great news for you, Rob. So, obviously it's going to be a bit of a gap between us saying we would like to abolish no fault divorce to it actually happening. In the meantime, for this to happen, feminism would have to be thoroughly discredited. And only then will you get no fault divorce abolished. So
Yeah.
So you guys need to denounce, challenge, and defeat feminism.
Yeah. But I guess, one of the
And
things
you
in
can
the
only
kind
defeat
of
with secular Koranism, and you already know that. You can only defeat feminism with secular Koranism. What else are you going to do to do it? There's nothing. There's nothing you can do to use it. That would work.
but is secular Quranism eugenic is my question.
Yes, because it supports marriage and would restore, maintain, and protect the patriarchy. It
But
would shame sluts and slut fuckers. That is the whole point of it.
yeah, but slut fuckers, as you eloquently put it, are like the ultimate males, right? They're like, they're like Odin in this like new world.
Currently, but you have to change people's attitudes, right? I mean, the only way to change things to get people to support your cause, whatever it is to change their attitude. And this is by winning arguments, and you can only win arguments by repeating yourself endlessly and explaining what you think the problem is and why you think your solution would work. But if most people think, I don't want to get married anyway, so I don't want to, I can't be asked to support no fault divorce because I don't want to get married anyway. And this is basically how you all think, how most of you think. So I guess Western civilization will continue in its slide to decline and extinction.
Do you have a vision for like if secular Quranism happened and like took over, say Australia or Britain or whatever, or the US? What's your ultimate vision for society? Like, and I'm not talking socially, I'm talking like going to Mars and, male things, going to Mars and like conquering the universe. Like, what's your vision of secular Quranism for a male?
Well, it would restore the patriarchy. We'll have our we'll all have our First Amendment rights in every country that adopts secular Quranism. So, they'll become constitutional republics. Sluts and slut fuckers will be shamed. There will be 20% flat rate income tax. Usury would be banned. So everyone can default on their loans contracted under usurious terms, and this would benefit governments and individuals. And this would lower property prices, making homes affordable to married couples. And war would be averted.
Okay. Sorry?
And World War III would be averted.
Right. And what is World War III? Like, do you think World War III will happen, without secular Quranism? What is your vision of World War III?
Well, the previous world wars broke out because the parties to these wars were not following Islamic principles of warfare. I mean, it can easily be proven anyway. I mean, just by who declared war, and they were based. World War I and World War II have been periodized as the second 30 Years' War. I don't know if we've discussed this. So it meant it was a very ruinous pan-European civil war.
Yeah.
And what was it about? It certainly wasn't about, Germany violating Belgian neutrality, was it?
Yeah.
That's a version I learned. I don't know what version you learned.
No, that's true. I just fear for so were the Belgians, I mean, are the Belgians worth keeping around?
No. Britain needed a reason to enter World War One. And so they scraped the barrel and found the Treaty of London, 1869, or was it 1839? I think it was 1839.
Yeah, this is where I get confused about history, because my conception of history basically is the Vikings invaded Britain. They were kind of based because they were Chad Aryan, Adonises. They got defeated via the what would you call it? A community of English folk or whatever rallying around Alfred the Great and so on. And then you have the Danelaw, and now you have the separation between the North and the South, because of the Danelaw and the Viking invasion, and there's genetics going on there. But basically, it was just kind of another civil war. It was like the Civil War before the English Civil War, right? But all of these kind of wars and stuff, they just equal more eugenics. So I think, okay, and I'll be completely candid here. I think World War One was not eugenic. You can argue against this, but I actually think World War One was dysgenic. What do you think about that?
Well, I would say that World War One was World War One and World War Two, also collectively known as the Second 30 Years' War, was the the 20th century equivalent of the Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta, who destroyed themselves
Yeah.
Fatally weakened themselves, making them eventually a province of Rome, because they had destroyed and exhausted themselves in their wars. And it's like, well, what was it about really? Between Athens and Sparta, they were Greeks. They worshipped the same gods. They spoke the same language, but they didn't have a proper religion that could regulate relations between themselves. They didn't have those rules that the Quran has. And so, and what they objected to each other was, one of you is democratic and one of you is just a military dictatorship, right? That was what the Spartans were. We don't like your way of doing things. So it's kind of like capitalism and communism. It's like, because you do the opposite of what we do, we hate you. And in the end, neither survived.
Hmm. So, like, what do you think about people like Greek philosophers? Do you think like they were like I'm talking about Aristotle, there was other people. Wait, what do you think about Homer?
Well, he wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey.
And
I
he
don't
was,
know.
do you think he was a product of eugenics or no?
I don't know about how can literature be a product of eugenics.
Okay, this is an interesting question. So, do you think Shakespeare was a product of eugenics?
Well, I suppose people who like Shakespeare, people who like Homer, would say that both were geniuses.
Interesting.
But marriageability, as far as I'm concerned, is that you are marriageable, and this means that you're not marriageable if everybody wants to marry you, but you don't want to marry. That means you're not marriageable. At least you yourself have to want to marry, otherwise you're not marriageable. Who would want to marry somebody who didn't want to marry them? No one.
Okay. Well, my fear is at this point in my life, my fear is like if I marry, that would be dysgenic. So my ultimate fear of getting married is related to eugenics. And what I'm saying is, at my point in my life, because of, maybe I'm an alcoholic and so on, is basically I would not want to, bring someone into the world, under my chaotic circumstances.
Well, once you form the intention of marrying and becoming a married father, your entire attitude towards life and your behavior will change. But obviously, it will take the love of a good woman to make you even contemplate the burdens of marriage, wouldn't it? But in the meantime, you can go on a marriage strike and say, I'm not going to get married until no fault divorce is abolished. And then, all the other men can get on your bandwagon in Australia and say that. I mean, you can do that, can't you?
No, yeah, I mean, I absolutely
I mean,
can.
you might have to
I
endure
don't know if it will like take off in any kind of
we don't
meaningful
know. We have to take
way.
risks, don't we? And then
Yeah, risk and so on.
you
Yeah,
might have to endure
well,
the
that's what I'm
mockery.
saying. I just feel like I'm not the man to make a risk because I have nothing really to
You're
give.
perfect. Because then, if you said that, I mean, you already say, oh, well, I mean, if I really want to shag a Sheila, the plenty I can just pick up. And, when I snap my fingers and walk down that street, that's what you're saying. And then people will say,
Yeah, but
yeah,
I
well,
don't. Yeah, but I don't want that to be okay. Maybe I'm too obsessed with the occult. I think is mainly my problem because my birth chart is like so fucked up, and I just would not want to. What's the word? I really wouldn't want to project that on my future offspring because I think they're gonna have some troubles.
Well, I think really, okay, I'm going to ban astrology as sorcery. I mean, I can see why they did in the olden
Nice.
days. And well, we should only do something if it's logical and in harmony with our moral principles. And that's it. I mean, it shouldn't be, oh, I was born under an unlucky star, and so my offspring and my grandchildren and my descendants. Better not then. Surely not.
All right. Well, hold on. Just
the furniture of our minds.
give me a minute. Talk about the chat or some shit. Give me a minute.
I can't see any chat. There's no one here. But the counter says 6. But yes, I think it's quite interesting that at the turn this conversation has taken. I actually understand why men are reluctant to marry, and that's why what is required of women is to make men want to marry them and assume the burdens of marriage and fatherhood, and therefore women have to change their behavior and be the kind of women men want to marry, and then men will do what we want. So the problem now is that men are basically muscling in on female territory, and these territories would be whinging like a woman and not being able to discuss solutions because they're too scared of provoking the disapproval and malice of their fellow men because there is no male solidarity. That's a problem. And of course, there's no code of gentlemanly behavior. So the people most likely to stab you in the back and the front would be your fellow men, supposedly supporting the same cause as you. So that's why men are paralyzed into inaction, and only the crazy energetic racists and anti-Semites are the most prominent people. But that suits the matriarchy just fine, because they want everyone to think that the only people complaining about the matriarchy are losers and larpers and incels and crazy men. But I think the situation can be remedied by people just asking for things and talking about things. I mean, how else is anything going to get done than through a dialogue between people who want to solve the problem? And of course, the dialogue has to be honest and civil and rational. And then people will start taking an interest. If it's not just about blaming Jews, moaning about the Muslims, complaining about the immigrants, which were specially imported in by, business organizations. So government will be protecting its investment, in. And the investment would be all the immigrants have brought in to do all the work that the locals refuse to do or are too busy claiming welfare to do. So I think it's a problem of labour management, which can be dealt with by managing gender relations a little better than we have done, because gender relations are important to get men and women to marry each other and stay together for the sake of the children and without the production of the next generation, your society will become a rapidly aging and shrinking society. And I just don't see what else would solve the problem other than secular Quranism. But I see that there are plenty of men happy to go to their graves moaning about Muslims, attacking the Jews, and complaining about the foreigners. So if that's all you want to do, then obviously you're not really a useful member to this movement.
Yeah, there is this idea in like Western philosophy of sacrifice, right? It's within like the Jesus myth, but it's also within like the dying on the battlefield for Valhalla.
300. I'm
Yeah,
referring to a
300
movie
and something. Yeah.
doubtless you will have seen. Is it 300 or 3,000?
Yeah, my point is like I want to die in glory for the gods. And I don't really care about anything else.
What did you say? You don't want to marry, you just want to be a martyr. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And the idea of martyrdom is glorious.
Well, you're kind of thinking like a Muslim Muslim martyr. To be fair, I mean, obviously, it's useful sometimes in wartime to go out in a blaze of glory, and you will be called a war hero. But currently, there is no war going on. But you could maybe just stick your head above the parapet.
Well, exactly. And I think like what Mishima did in Japan after World War II, he was trying to ignite his fellow military into a revolution. And he failed at that pursuit, and then he sacrificed himself via seppuku.
Mm-hmm.
But that is like kind of, I don't know, there's something about that which is spiritual to me, and like it means more than reproduction to me.
You want to go down in history. You want to have a legacy. Well, you could just go on about this thing that I suggested without, hurting yourself. This is what I recommend. And it's
yeah. What I'm saying is, it's not like a grand. Your Quranism has no like Western backing, right? It has no entrenchment within Western history. Whereas the Viking myths and the Japanese myths, they have more kind of meaning to me than any kind of tale from the Middle East, right?
But you don't have a gang of Vikings, Viking men to go around, on Viking raids. And I don't imagine you would actually get round to committing seppuku.
Oh, you don't think I could do it?
No. And I wouldn't want you to.
Well, that's where you're wrong. I mean, the Italian emperors did it in their bathtub.
Or they just open their veins.
Yeah.
Seppuku is very, very painful. You're supposed to stick the knife in one side of your stomach and then pull it to the other side.
Yeah, it's a
While your guts
full.
come
Yeah,
out.
it's
I
the
really don't.
conviction of. I would say it's like the ultimate test to God, right? It's like, can I complete this? Can I complete this ritual?
Well, there's no need for that. There's really no need for that when there are much easier ways of, making your point. I mean, the most I would ask of you is to go public on this and see what happens.
Yeah, it's like
You lead the men's marriage strike in Australia. And then the most you'll suffer is, oh well, Rob, who would want to marry you anyway? That's the worst that could be said about you. And then
Mhm,
maybe some women might think you're not so bad after listening to a few of our conversations.
mhm.
Hmm. So,
Well, anyway, I didn't want to go full dark. I
well,
didn't want to go there.
I mean, I understand that, for young men, these ideas, ingested through, watching war films, might seem superficially attractive, but I would say it's unnecessary and unconstructive. And
Yeah.
I think you can do better and have a happier ending just by yakking away.
Well, true. It's interesting. I mean, I think God gave certain gifts to men and women, right? I think, like, women in general are more like kind of social. They have like a social gift. They have a gift of the gab, you would say. It's not only that, they have a gift of like reactions and dance and so on in social situations, right? And
You're
men are
supposed
more
to have a
practical. They've
compliment.
been given like gifts of like building things and doing things, and not it's not a social concern for the general man, right? And it's like, why do we have to betray our natures, right? Can we not just live in our own environment?
And perform our gender roles, because performing our gender roles is crucial to the practice of marriage.
Yeah, but in today's day and age, like, men are not like the average man who can like build a house is not attractive to a woman unless he advertises it on like
No, 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 no,
Instagram or YouTube, and then that becomes a feminine practice, filming yourself doing things.
I don't think you're quite understanding what I'm proposing. I'm saying men have to change the rules back to when it protected the patriarchy, i.e., married fathers. You need to do that again to make marriage a worthwhile bargain for men to make with women. That is the destination. I mean, don't you see? I mean, in theory, that's what's needed to make men want to marry again. And women, in order to make men want to marry them again, have to behave in a different way.
I
Yes,
agree. I agree. I agree. The
and
problem
all
I
you have to
have,
do is say that with conviction, and again and again and again, and offer yourself up as a poster boy for you
don't
know.
think, I don't
Yeah, yeah,
think
you're assuming
I
that you're
don't think
assuming things again.
morality is attractive, though.
It doesn't matter. You've already said, look, you've already said you don't want to marry in this terrible world, and I'm saying, okay, just by saying what you're saying, you probably won't get any immediate offers of marriage. You would have to, commit to it and say it again and again for people to understand that you really mean what you say. I mean, it worked for Trump, didn't it? But I see that you are assuming failure, so you won't even try it. And this is the mindset of most men. They assume failure
Do you think?
and they won't try it.
Yeah. Do you think honesty is like attractive?
Yes. It's very annoying to be lied to. Well, we don't like it when our ruling classes do it to us, do we?
But women are so easy to lie to.
They're easy to lie to, you say?
Yeah, why is it so easy?
Well, because people want to believe in certain things, in certain stories, certain narratives, right? So if you say, you are this thing that the person is looking for, and the person is wanting something, and you just say that I'm the thing you're looking for, and if they believe you, then they'll be putty in your hands, right?
Exactly, but what I'm saying is, if we say the truth in today's day and age, in often the majority of social situations, if we say the truth out loud, we're punished.
Well, I guess
We're
you have
ostracized.
punishment.
We're cast aside.
But you've already said you don't want to be a father anyway, so you can be a martyr without hurting yourself, right?
Oh, so you want me to be a martyr now?
Yeah, you can be the martyr for incels.
I'm just saying that was a fantasy that I had. It's not like my whole thing.
Look, you can be the hero of incels if you say, I'm going on a marriage that, and then people say, oh, well, no one wants to marry you anyway.
Yeah,
Well,
maybe I could, yeah.
and that's
Wait. If that was, hold on. If that was even a thing, imagine a world of incels. I mean, that would be like hell on earth, right?
No. This is what's going to happen. So then the other incels that will say, I'm Spartacus. There's that Spartacus moment. But this movement will reach the eligible bachelors that females would be unable to marry.
It's almost like eugenics still lives under the empire of what would you call it? Non-eugenics. What would you call it? Liberalism?
Christianity.
Yeah. Sissy, girl boy, simpism that is our current culture.
Well, you have the opportunity, the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Rob, of being the leader and the hero by being first, right? You got to be first. Nobody can take that away from you. But somebody's got to do it, and you're the perfect representative. People, get what you say. You're kind of everyman, right?
Yeah. Well,
you kind of represent.
it's interesting because
Australians and men.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting now that you're interested in the concept. It's like now I don't want to do it. Now I feel bad because I feel like, I would be enabling dysgenics to breed. So, yeah. I shut the idea of, maybe I could start a revolution, but
without
I'm never gonna. I guess I would never sacrifice myself because I feel like I'm not even known enough to do that.
You will be known. once you say what you say and do what you do using your real name. And then you might get into trouble, but we're going to fight it together, Rob, you and me. Remember,
All right. Well, I think we need to end because it's been far too long. But anyway, yeah, happy Koraniyule or whatever.
Thank you for coming again on the Sec. And yeah, you've got take 1 and take 2. And well done. I've enjoyed our conversation. We've covered new territory and new ideas, and possibly you will even do what I hope you will do: be the poster boy of the marriage strike.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, maybe I'll visit what do they call them? A Muslim temple? What is it called?
A masjid.
A mosque. Maybe
Yes,
I'll even go to a mosque.
Yes.
And then, I can convert these Arab women to Western paganism, just via the beauty of my form.
Yes. Yes, it's a possibility.
Yeah, it's like the Apollo vision versus, I don't know, the Satanist vision. It's like either full suicide for fame or full turn up to a mosque and a lot of Arab women desire me. That's the it's like two wolves. There's two wolves in the Western man's mind, and these are the two options. Machinima, in visual art, sacrifice, or turn up to a mosque and become Apollo.
Yes, and you could live stream about it, right? It becomes your kind of your legacy, your diary, or your public diary, and it could be a really great YouTube channel.
I could start a new religion.
Yeah, possibly.
All right, now I've gone too far. All right, thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Rob.
Have a great night. Thanks again.
Okay.
Merry Christmas.